Okay, it's January 30th. This is our first official show, the new Clint Bryant Show, and we're going to jump right into college basketball. We've got coaches top 25. We'll compare it a little bit to the AP top 25. We've got unranked teams beating ranked teams, home court advantage playing a role, the Big 12 SEC Challenge, coaches versus cancer, Cinderella watch list, Peach Belt action, the best story of the week. We've got it all. Coach, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start talking about the SEC Big 12 Challenge. I think that's the way to go. You know, earlier in the year, I think we had the ACC Big 10 Challenge. Now you have the SEC Big 12 Challenge. Every game was an exciting game. I thought the Texas-Tennessee game was a big-time game. Being game day, now they got game day in college basketball like college football. They were there in Knoxville, and all the students were there. It was a great atmosphere. Then that night, an unbelievable game. The Kansas-Kentucky game, I thought, was an exceptional game for Kansas to go in the Rupp Arena and win. But I said that to say this, Chad. I like when teams play people of equal competitiveness and equal conferences. I just thinking out loud, I think in Division I, a Big South A-Sun Challenge would be good. A Sun Belt Colonial Challenge would be good. An A-10 American Conference would be good. I would venture to say right now, from top to bottom, there's no better basketball being played than the American Conference. I mean, I think Houston is exceptional, but so is Temple, Memphis, Central Florida. Is in that thing. Cincinnati's in that league. There's some very good basketball being played in the American Conference. So jumping right in, Chad, I just think there should be more challenges, giving an opportunity for people to see exactly what the NCAA tournament might look like. I have 25 teams in my top 25 this week. I'm sure some are different than the AP top 25. But at the same time, Chad, I think there's another 30 or so teams out there with another 5 or 6 knocking on the door that could very well be in the top 20. I think the NCAA, as I've stated before, is making the right move by expanding the basketball tournament to 90 teams, and I wouldn't be surprised over the next 4 or 5 years if that's not 100 teams. So with that being said, 144 unranked teams have defeated ranked teams this season. Yeah. And we still probably got another 9 or 10 games to go. You know, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and on that note, so the Big 12 SEC Challenge, you got 10 years of history there. I guess this was the final one. Makes sense with, I guess, Texas and Oklahoma moving over to the SEC. But unranked teams beating ranked teams, you mentioned either 136, 140 of those occurrences already this season. West Virginia beat number 15 Auburn. Oklahoma smacked number 2 Alabama, 93-69. That was a beatdown.
It was a beatdown, a real big-time beatdown on their home floor. But, you know, Oklahoma's traditionally had good basketball.
Certainly.
It's been a good basketball school. Years and years ago, I remember when Billy Tubbs were there, they were really good. That team with Dwayne Tisdale, Harvey Grant,
Mookie Blaylock.
And remember, they lost to Kansas and Danny Manning in the national championship game. I think that was 1988.
It was.
So, I mean, again, Chad, it's just college basketball at its best, and you're really going to see some things, as I said before, as we make our way to getting seeded in the conference tournament, and then the conference tournaments taking the automatic bid. This week, Georgetown won a game, first time, and then gave St. John's all they wanted the other day. There's several coaches, and we'll talk about this later, that's on the hot seat right now, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then there are a number of small colleges, if you will, those mid-majors, low-major coaches who do a really good job and going to get an opportunity to participate at bigger schools. I mean, Wake Forest is a great example. Their coach used to be at East Tennessee State. And so, again, it's supposed to be Man, I tell you, Shaka Smart is doing an unbelievable job at Marquette right now.
Okay.
The Marquette's got a good basketball team. Providence has got a good team. Ed Cooley is doing a fabulous job there. You know, those are both Big East teams. And Xavier's in that conference playing very well. But a team to look out for is Creighton. Creighton is getting some people healthy. And they had a huge win yesterday or the day before against Xavier.
Yes. Now, in that back to that SEC Big 12, we mentioned West Virginia beating Auburn, Oklahoma beating Alabama. Both of those happened on the home court. 8-2 home teams versus away teams. You've talked about the importance of home court advantage in college basketball. Missouri beat number 12 Iowa State. Baylor beat Arkansas. Baylor was actually ranked 17 going into that. Number 4 Tennessee won at home against number 10 Texas. Kansas, one of the main outlier was number 9 Kansas going to Kentucky and getting a win. They needed one, Coach. They had dropped 3 in a row.
They had dropped 3 in a row, and I don't know how many times Bill Self has lost 3 games in a row, 3 conference games. But
actually, if they would have dropped their 4th in a row, that would have been the first time ever.
First time ever, because Kansas is a blue blood. I mean, people talk about Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky and Indiana, all being UConn, being kind of blue blood schools, but that's Kansas. And right now, we're sitting here at the end of January the 30th, and UNC and Duke are not ranked in the top 25 in the country. I don't think in their poll, the AP poll, or the Clint Bryant poll, they're not ranked. Also, I have Kentucky and Indiana outside of the poll along with UConn. They all have good teams, and I believe they will make the NCAA tournament without a doubt. They won't be the type of seeds that they've been in the past, 1, 2, or 3 seeds, but I think last year North Carolina as the 7th seed made it all the way to the final game. Yeah. And so college basketball getting we talked a little bit, Chad, last week a little bit about the importance of a home court advantage.
We did.
And I knew Augusta University going over to Aiken last Wednesday was going to be a tough deal, because I knew Aiken's students and people would show up. And I think I read where they had 12 or 1,300 people. And that's a good crowd at Aiken.
No doubt about it. And you mentioned how prior to that, Augusta bringing it home in the Peach Belt Conference, number 9 ranked in the nation, lost 2 in a row last week, 1 at home to Flagler, and you mentioned how it was like a neutral court. Then they go on the road to USC Aiken, big home court advantage at Aiken, full house, great atmosphere. The Augusta fans, by the way, traveled well for that one. And Augusta dropped that one 81-76. Then Aiken goes on the road. That was the second win over a ranked opponent for Aiken in 2 games. Then they go on the road Saturday to number 18 North Georgia, win that game. Jameel Rideout, a freshman, he scored 13 against Augusta in the win. Jameel Rideout makes a bucket, a baseline jumper at the buzzer to beat North Georgia. So that's 3 straight wins over ranked opponents. Aiken's 8-2 in the conference, Augusta's 8-2 in the conference, and North Georgia is 7-2 in the conference. And who comes to Augusta Wednesday night but North Georgia? So the 3 top teams in the conference are fighting it out, and Wednesday will be the chance that Augusta fans get to come and create that home court advantage that Aiken benefited from last week.
Yeah, well, that's what college basketball is all about, and I think the Peach Belt is no different than any conference in the country right now, is that there's some good teams, and as you make this final trek to conference tournament time, there's about a month left in the season, and there's going to be some great basketball played, and I think the Peach Belt is a prime example of that, with Augusta being 17-3.
Yeah.
I don't know if Coach Metris would like to play 20 games over again and have a better record, but 17-3 is a pretty good record.
Yeah.
And it should be. Not one team should dominate in the conference, and I think that's the competitiveness, because there's some good coaches in the Peach Belt Conference, and that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit later too. Is that the big major conferences and Big Five schools have been looking to the NBA ranks to bring in former players of NCAA to be coaches. And now the small college coaches, the coaches at Division II or III, who I think are very capable of coaching some big-time basketball, don't get the same opportunities as maybe some guys get. But I think there might be a trend headed the other way where some colleges might look to fill their coaching spots with proven winners, guys who have called timeout, because there's no less stress in the Peach Belt or the MEAC or the SWAC or the Big South Atlantic 10. They have the same stresses as the coaches in the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac 10 have. Everybody wants to win. The pressure now, especially, Chad, with social media being so much part of the game. But I think it's so important for people to get home court advantage. And what creates home court advantage is the students who come out and raise Cain. A lot of people have moved their students down on the floor. Michigan and Michigan State did it years ago. Under Tommy Amaker, Michigan did it, and then Izzo, the Iz Zone there at Michigan State, is a crazy, crazy atmosphere. Duke's a crazy atmosphere. This week, I'll have the opportunity to go to Clemson University, where they play the University of Miami. And that's going to be a very special time for me because, I coached at both places. And I left Clemson to go to the University of Miami. But I tell you what, Saturday afternoon, Little John Coliseum will be rocking.
Clemson, top 25 team still. They've won several in a row, but 2 out of the last 3 games they've won on the last possession. Hunter Tyson made a 3 in a 52-51.
game.
Yeah, real low-scoring game against Virginia Tech at home. Then they go on the road to Florida State, win 82-81, high-scoring game. Chase Hunter. What a play Coach Brownell drew up on that, 6-7 seconds to go, length of the court play to get him basically in a little bit of a one-on-one situation.
I say it, you've heard me say it before, I say it again. Coach Brad Brownell at Clemson is one of the best coaches in the country. X's and O's. He can really coach the game of basketball. What Clemson suffers from, they don't have the pedigree to get the 5-star recruits that a lot of people get. So Brad does an outstanding job. Great play call. Kid drives the length of the floor, lays it up, contact, and makes a free throw to win at Florida State. And Florida State don't lose a lot at home. That might have been the first ACC game that they lost at home this year.
Yeah. But you mentioned former NBA players being college coaches and not having all the success in the world in general, and then maybe guys who are like lifer coaches. I think you said guys who have called timeout before. Is that how you put it? Yeah, I like that saying. Kind of getting more of a chance. So I'm going to bring that to Kennesaw State. We talked about them a little bit last week. Amir Abdur-Rahim, whose brother, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, was an NBA All-Star Team USA guy. I actually played a little AAU ball with him way back in the day. But Amir is one of those coaching lifers, and he's doing a great job at Kennesaw State. There was an article in The Athletic, Coach, where, as you said last week, Kennesaw State, former Peach Belt Conference team, won the Division II National Championship in 2004. They go D1 in 2005. They had single-digits wins in Division I up until this year, or maybe it was last year, but up until Amir Abdur-Rahim got on campus. They won 1 game his first season, 6 games combined in his first 2 seasons. Now they are tied at the top of the A-Sun with Liberty. I think they play Liberty on February 16th, a Thursday. Kennesaw State's gym is going to be rocking for that one. But that path that Amir Abdur-Rahim is following, where you win 1 your first year, you won 6 your first 2 years, it kind of reminds me of your path a while back at Augusta College. Tell us about Abdur-Rahim and Kennesaw State.
Well, Rahim, and I know his brother really well because he played for me at USA Basketball, where we won a gold medal on a team of he and Stephon Marbury and
Trajan Langdon was
Trajan
he on that team?
Langdon was on that team. Robert Truck Trailer from Michigan was on that team. We had a wonderful, wonderful team. Corey
McGetty.
Alexander.
From Virginia.
Virginia was on that team. Monty Williams, the coach now of the Phoenix Suns, was on that team. We had a good team.
Oh yeah.
But there again, I think Kennesaw has done it the right way and doing it the right way. Right now they are 17-6. Liberty is 17-5. The sad thing about it, they will probably only get one team out of that league in the NCAA. And that will probably be Kennesaw Liberty if they make the championship game and don't get upset.
Yes.
But they will only take one team from that league. But it would be a shame for Kennesaw to go all the way and lose to Liberty, or they and Liberty both get upset and somebody else wins the A-Sun.
You know what would be the biggest shame in that league?
What?
Queens University, who we know, they're in that league now. They're playing pretty well.
Well, they're playing really well. And Dye, as you know, the point guard from that team is a tremendous, tremendous player. He can really play. And they went on the road and won this week at the Florida Gulf Coast.
And Stetson. I'm not sure if they played at Stetson or at Queens, but they beat Stetson.
They did. And I tell you, man, it's a college basketball is very interesting. And I tell you what, someone coming to Queens University to play got a tough out because they draw very, very well in their little gym there. And I think they are the Lions, the Queen University Lions.
Oh, the Royals.
The Royals.
Royal City, I think, or Queen City, Charlotte. But the reason why I say it would be a shame if they win that tournament, because they can't get a bid.
No.
I think it's 4 years. So they go, for those of you who aren't familiar, Queens is our old nemesis. Augusta University's old nemesis in Division II, the Southeast region. We beat them in the Southeast region championship game last season to go to the Elite Eight. Well, they move up to Division I. They can't go to the tournament for the first 4 seasons. So do you happen to know if they won that tournament? I wonder if they would take the runner-up or if they would that league would forfeit a bid.
They probably will take the runner-up.
Okay.
That happened in somebody else last year. And I can't remember the team who did it. They actually won. It might have been Bellarmine.
Okay.
Bellarmine. Okay. Out of Louisville, Kentucky.
And they took the runner-up, you think?
And they took the runner-up to go to the NCAA.
Well, it wouldn't be a shame then. Go Queens. I was going to root against them, but, won't do that now.
The thing is that, again, basketball is basketball. And what you see is that sometimes we think the basketball at the Power 5 conference level is the only basketball in the country. And a lot of times those leagues get 7, 8. Some people think some league might get as many as 9 in the NCAA tournament this year. I don't know if that's fair or not, especially in a league where you got some really competition. It'd be a shame this year to only take one team out of the Colonial League or one team out of the A10, the Atlantic 10. In that league, Dayton's playing well, Davidson's playing well, VCU is an exceptional team. So good. College basketball, home court advantage, it's all important. And then we'll have an opportunity to see over the next several weeks, not only great basketball in the Southeastern Conference and the ACC in our region, but we'll also see tremendous basketball in the Big South, the Atlantic 10, and of course our own Peach Belt Conference.
Yeah. Now, to your point about the smaller conferences not getting the respect of the bigger conferences, you've got College of Charleston dropping a game to Hofstra at home in the AP Top 25. Puts them out, they're out of the AP Top 25. You've still got them in yours, which I love. The College of Charleston's 9-1, still in charge of that league. The Colonial got UNC Wilmington at 7-3, and then Hofstra and I believe somebody else at 8-2. I've got it here in my note. Oh, Delaware at 8-2. So College of Charleston's still in the mix now. But when it comes to big conferences, I'll throw out a couple things. It was notable to me that Joe Lunardi, I think, does this bracketology thing. I think he's with ESPN, and he's got 6 Big 12 teams in the top 16. When it comes to like 1 through 4 seeds, if the tournament were to start today, so that's an interesting thing. I think I also saw 12 of the top 30 teams were playing in that Big East, that Big 12 SEC Challenge. That's kind of interesting, but also I got to touch on Purdue. This guy, Zach Edey, they're saying the player of the year race is over. He had, I'll let you go on it in a second, but he had 38-13 in a blowout win at home over Michigan State yesterday. That comes 13 days after having 32-17 against that same Michigan State team. They also went on the road and put it on Michigan Wednesday. But Zach Edey, 7'4", guy from Ontario. I didn't know he's from Canada. Great player.
Great player. I think Zach Edey, Purdue plays like basketball was played 10 or 15 years ago. They actually play and get the ball in the paint. Coach Mitras does a lot of that at Augusta University because he's had the Tyshawn Crawfords or, when Garrett Sallows, they're legitimate centers. And Zach Edey does not want to be anything but a center.
Yeah.
And he's good, he's active, he runs the floor well, he's got great hands, he can catch anything. He's got like catcher's mitts on his hands.
He does.
And he's able to change the game not only from an offensive standpoint by rebounding and making shots, but he also creates a problem on the defensive end of the floor where he alters a lot of shots because he's so big. He's 7'4".
Yes.
There's not many 7'4" guys running around. And so Purdue is an exceptional team. I think they'll make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. Zach is good. He's really, really good. But I think it's a little early to be calling him Player of the Year so far. But again, as you know, there's a lot of good teams in this country right now, and we'll go down the AP top 25, and then we'll go down Coach Bryant's top 25. And we have some similarities in our top 25, but I also have some surprises.
Well, let's do that then. So, I'll just kind of stop me when you want to make a point.
Okay.
So the Coach Bryant top 25. We've got number 1 Purdue. So does AP. You've got Houston at 2. AP has Tennessee. You've got Tennessee at 3. AP has Houston. So kind of just a flip flop there. You've got Kansas State at 4. They've got Alabama at 4. Now, where do you have Alabama all the way at, 9?
I have Alabama at 9, and the reason I got Alabama at 9 is that they took such a whooping at Oklahoma.
They sure did.
Who's an unranked team, and they got beat 30 almost, or the game was 30, and it might end up losing.
Yeah, it was 24 at the end, 93-69.
Yeah, so that's the reason I dropped Alabama. I kept them in the top 10, but I dropped them to 9th. Based on that blowout loss to Oklahoma and Oklahoma not being ranked.
Yeah, I'm looking for the fella's name that torched them. He's a guard, Sherfield.
Yeah,
Sherfield. Now, notice. Okay, Sherfield was at Nevada. Then he was at Wichita State. Now he's at Oklahoma. In the West Virginia Auburn game, a guy named Jack Stevenson. He had 30 against Auburn. He was at somewhere. It might have been Wichita State, and then South Carolina. I think he might have been at 4 schools. So that transfer thing, boy,
it's crazy.
Everybody who played well Saturday, it seemed like I would go look them up, and then I would count the number of schools they had been at.
Well, the thing is that I don't know what Oklahoma and Wichita State because back a couple of years ago, the kid Reeves, Reaves, 6'6", who plays for the Lakers now. He played for Greg Marshall at Wichita State, and we played against him. That's when Keyshawn
Did he play in that game?
Yes, he did. That's when Keyshawn Sherrill went off and got 38, got 32 in the second half at Wichita State, which is not an easy thing to do. But I said that the Reeves transferred from Wichita to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And then he was a first-round draft pick, and now he plays for the Lakers. Again, the transfer portal's here to stay. It's making a lot of difference. A lot of teams that you see that have improved from one year to the next, Pitt being a prime example of that. A lot of transfers. Providence has hit the transfer portal hard. Marquette has hit the transfer portal. Alabama's hit the transfer portal.
I think Arkansas uses it basically as their main weapon, right?
Arkansas's main weapon. Their coach is very, very committed to the transfer portal. A lot of talk about he might be going to the NBA. We'll see.
Yeah.
But no, that's the reason I dropped Alabama from the top 3 to still in the top 10. But the whooping they took at Oklahoma.
Yeah. So at 5 and 6, you and the AP both have Arizona at 5 and Virginia at 6. You've got Gonzaga at 7. Now, where does the AP have? Gonzaga's got it, what, 12? Or AP has it, what, 12? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so you've got Gonzaga at 7. They've got them at 12. Now, last week you said St. Mary's was the best team on the West Coast. Have you changed your mind about that?
No, I still got St. Mary's there, but I think Gonzaga, because of traditionally being tough, and Gonzaga being a really, really tough place to play, it's going to be very interesting because I think St. Mary's did beat Gonzaga.
Well, no, I think that Loyola Marymount is who got Gonzaga on their home court for like the first time in forever.
And so Gonzaga and St. Mary's game, whenever it's going to be a big
always a good one.
Because right now St. Mary's is 19-4, Gonzaga is 18-4. But I got St. Mary's number 12 in my poll.
Now, you've told me about staying up late at night and watching these West Coast games, and I hadn't done it before you said it, but I did Saturday night. And did you happen to see the St. Mary's finish?
No.
Okay, so you talking about home court. BYU was up on them, playing well on their home court, and a guy named Aiden Mahaney. And I got to get up to speed on my St. Mary's basketball. I think he's their best player, and I think he had a tough game, but he made the game winner, 57-56, St. Mary's. So, like you talk about home court being so important. But it also kind of separates the men from the boys when it comes to when you're able to win in that hostile environment. Like St. Mary's did at BYU, Kansas did at Kentucky, Purdue did at Michigan. It's a good test, right?
It's a great test. And then another team from the West Coast that's really playing well is San Diego State.
Yeah.
They are 17-4. How about Oral Roberts, 19-4?
Yeah. Now, what league are they in?
Oral Roberts, I don't know. They're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I know that. And they're better than the University of Tulsa. And I would venture to say they're better than Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. But, Oral Roberts made a run, if it wasn't last year.
Beat Kentucky
several years ago? They played very, very well. Oral Roberts has a great basketball tradition. So, again, there's somebody that's outside of the top 25 right now, but very well could be in next week or the week after. Because if they win a game or two, they're going to be 20 or 21 wins already with 4 or 5 games to go left in the season.
So we'll pick it up at 7. You've got Gonzaga. AP has Kansas State. You had Kansas State up at 4. All right, at 8, you've got Marquette. The AP has Kansas. You've got Kansas quite a bit down from there. Let me see.
I got Kansas at 14.
Yeah.
And the reason I got Kansas at 14, Kansas lost 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
And they did, in fact, beat Kentucky, but Kentucky's not ranked right now. Even though I thought it was very impressive for them to go into Rupp Arena, but they took it on the chin 3 times.
Yeah.
And that right there, to me, doesn't make them a top 10 team.
Right.
Top 10. So that's why I got Kansas at 14. And it's going to be very interesting in that league because I think Kansas and Kansas State has the rematch this week.
Well, can't wait for that.
And I think that game is going to be at Kansas.
Well, and tell me about, so the Kansas State, when they won, they got up on the scoring table and led the KSU cheers. I think the head coach did. And, good for them celebrating. But those Kansas guys are licking their chops, right?
Well, not only the Kansas, but the Kansas fans.
Yes.
The Kansas State rivalry is Duke, North Carolina. It's Alabama, Auburn.
Yes.
You could throw records out the door.
Yeah.
And the great story about Kansas State right now, the young man that played at Florida that had the heart condition during the Florida State game 3 years ago, now plays at Kansas State. And in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, Kansas State played the University of Florida, and Kansas State won.
That's right, Keontae Johnson.
So, again, there's a lot of by stories there, but again, that's the reason I got Kansas at 14 outside of the top 10 just because they had lost 3 games in a row.
Right. Okay, so picking it up there, I'm picking it up at Alabama. What's that, 9? Do you have Alabama at 9?
I have Alabama at 9.
AP has 10, or has UCLA at 9, and you've got UCLA at 10. They've got Texas at 10. I think you had Texas, right there at 11, so that's pretty much the same. They've got Baylor at 11. You've got them at 13, so that's pretty close. You've got St. Mary at 12. Now, where does the AP? They've got to have them in there because they won. Where's it? I guess I got them right around 18. So you're a little higher on St. Mary's. You kind of talked about that for a second.
Well, the thing about Texas I thought was very interesting is that, Texas is doing this with their interim coach.
They sure are.
And because their head coach got in a little trouble, domestic violence situation, and I think...
And they fired him.
Yeah, and I think Texas did the right thing.
Yeah.
He had to be held accountable for his actions. So, but again, I thought it was very interesting at the end of the game, Tennessee, because Rick Barnes coached at Texas.
That's right.
Kevin Durant played for Rick Barnes when he was at Texas. Yeah. And Rick Barnes made it a point after the game to really talk to their coach and put his arm around him. Yeah. I bet you that was a pretty neat conversation because Rick knows how tough it is to run at Texas and how much pressure under the young man is going on there. Now, a lot of people are saying that the next coach at Texas will be John Calipari.
Oh, really?
From Kentucky. And you say, oh, wow, is that a stretch? I think it will be a smart move because John Calipari has done his time at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kentucky, expectation of Kentucky basketball is unbelievable. Yeah. If you're not a top 5 team with a shot at the Final Four, at Kentucky, that's not good enough. And I think right now, John Calipari, the administration, and the fans right now is a very difficult time. So let's keep an eye on that. John Calipari to Texas, even though I think the young man at Texas has done a good enough job to get the head job. So we'll see how that works out.
Very impressive, when Beard went through that, for them to just keep moving in a positive direction, staying right near the top 10. I'm very impressed with that. Okay, we've got Providence and TCU. You've talked about Clemson, Xavier. Where do we have TCU picking up?
I got TCU at 17.
17, okay, and you've got Auburn at 18. Auburn took it on the chin to, what was that, West Virginia and Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Now, so 2 losses last week, but you still got them in the top 25.
I got them in the top 25, and their days might be short. Mm-hmm. I don't think Auburn's playing very well right now. I think
now they get an opportunity to bounce back Wednesday. You know who they have Wednesday?
Who you got Wednesday?
They're hosting Georgia, and Georgia is on that borderline of becoming relevant.
Yeah, Georgia is one of Auburn's 5 losses.
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah, so that'll be a big game, and Georgia's very close to being in the top 25. Texas
4-4 in the SEC. Georgia is,
and Texas A&M had a very impressive win. Texas A&M is very close, so I think Georgia and Texas A&M are all legit. Auburn is hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
One of the things I think Auburn's home court advantage is a big deal.
Yeah.
They really get after you at Auburn. So the win for Texas A&M last week at Auburn was huge. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back.
I'll take an interview with Charles Barkley any day, and he sat at the announce table and talked during that the first half of that Auburn West Virginia game, and I thought it was funny. He said something like, you can take this transfer portal stuff and shove it. Mm-hmm. He compared it to load management in the NBA. But he also said, because you just expect funny stuff like that from Barkley. But he also said that Auburn's guard play will determine how far it goes. And I think it bared out in that game against West Virginia. Wendell Green Jr., he's their leading scorer, but he didn't play all that well. And, I do think their strength is inside. Jalen Williams, I think a guy named Johnny Broom who transferred from Morehead State. I think they're stronger inside than outside.
And our own kid here from Evans High School.
Yeah, Dylan Cardwell.
Dylan Cardwell is doing a really good job. But I think Auburn is missing the boat a little bit. Based on the fact, I think Jasper is a great point guard that really understands the game. And I think he's able to turn the game around defensively. He's a pass first, shoot guy second. And Auburn needs that. They need Zepp leadership on the court. Green is a tremendous talent, but his decision-making at times concerns me.
He's definitely a shoot-first point guard, and to your point, Zepp's a pass-first point guard. Zepp Jasper, by the way, graduate of Laney, played at College of Charleston before transferring to Auburn. And, it's definitely two different. Coach Mitras at Augusta University would call Wendell Green a points guard and Zepp Jasper a point guard, and definitely two different ways to go about it. Looking past that, both you and the AP have Florida Atlantic at number 19. You keep New Mexico in your top 20 at number 20. They fell, I want to say, at Nevada 97-94 last week. You've got College of Charleston still in your top 20, top 25 at 21. AP's got them out. Indiana's in the AP at 21, and you don't have them in your top 25. So let's take College of Charleston and Indiana. You've got Charleston in the top 25. The AP has the big blue blood in the top 25. What's the difference there?
Well, I think the difference is that the College of Charleston, after losing their first game, won 21 in a row.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. And doing that in the Colonial League is not shabby at all.
Pretty unforgiving for them to get booted out with one loss, right?
One loss. And they are, you think about, they get booted out with one loss, and Kansas stays in the top 10, and they lost 3 in a row. Right. Come on. I mean, that's the thing that bothers me a little bit there. But I think the College of Charleston is well worth staying. New Mexico and Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic being 21-1. That guy's done an exceptional job there as well. I have from there, I got Miami still in my top 25. I think, where does the AP have Miami this year?
Well, I'm a little bit surprised they kept them in there at 23. Dropped 2 last week. You've got them at 22, and that sets so Miami at 22 will be visiting Clemson at you've got Clemson at 16? Yeah. So 16 versus 22 at Clemson Saturday. You're going to be there. I'm trying my best to be there. What do you expect from that student section, that home crowd at Clemson Saturday?
Well, I think it'll be rocking. And like I said, Clemson and Miami have a history. I was very fortunate to work at Clemson University from 1977 to 1984. And I left Clemson with Coach Bill Foster, and we started the program at the University of Miami after a 16-year hiatus of not having basketball. They dropped basketball, and I remember Coach Foster and I flying from Atlanta to Miami for the press conference to take the job, and he looked over at me and said, wouldn't it be something that if one day the University of Miami was in the ACC? And as you look back on that, this was 1984, and with the University of Miami being an independent when I was there, and then moving into people don't realize they were in the Big East.
Okay.
They were in the Big East
a minute. That's right.
And then now in the ACC, and the job that Jim Larrañaga has done at Miami is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Elite 8 last year. I think they just that good this year. So again, Miami's taking a couple on the chin, but again, it's conference time, playing on the road, and so it's going to be a great game. I can't wait. I'm going to be there physically. Can't wait for the atmosphere. But I think the young man, 6'9" for Clemson,
P.J. Hall?
No,
or Hunter Tyson?
Hunter Tyson.
Yeah.
Nobody in the country is playing better than him right now with much confidence. If he's making the 3, Clemson's a tough out anywhere. And at home, I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, Clemson is undefeated at home.
Yeah.
The last time Clemson went undefeated at home was in 1980 when I was there, and we went 15-0 at home. Yeah. And we beat Ralph Sampson in Virginia, Michael Jordan in North Carolina, Eugene Banks and Dremiski was number 1 in the country at Duke, and we won. When I was up for the Louisville game, I sat right behind Dremiski, and he turned around and we talked a long time. He said, I remember that game. He said, I'm sure the fire marshal wasn't here that night. And he was exactly right. The roles and everything's back. So again, ACC basketball, this time of year, as you make yourself to the ACC tournament, which will be in Greensboro, North Carolina this year.
Good.
I plan on going up to
Good.
see that ACC tournament, especially the last couple of days to see it. And we'll see what happens from there.
It's so interesting, and I'll just touch on this for a second, then I want to ask you something specific. But ACC having Clemson up at the top, the Big Ten after Purdue, you've got Rutgers and Northwestern in the 2 and 3 spot. So interesting how those two Power 5 conferences have unfamiliar faces, based on recent history up at the top. But Coach, you talked for a second there about the early '80s and your time in the ACC with Clemson and an undefeated team at home in 1980. And I've been thinking about that something related to that ever since our conversation last week. I met you in 1988 after you had been at Miami for 4 or 5 years, and you came to Augusta to become our athletic director and our head coach. But before that, you were 7 or 8 years at Clemson, and it just occurred to me that, I've never once asked you things like, tell me about playing against Michael Jordan. Tell me about probably seeing it. You probably saw him in high school. Ralph Sampson, you probably saw these guys in high school. You coached Horace Grant and Larry Nance. Just give us a story or two about whether it be Michael Jordan, Ralph Sampson, probably James Worthy, all these legends of the basketball game.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it was a lot different time there, Chad. AAU travel basketball and the shoe companies having, Nike travel team, Adidas travel teams, and so forth and so on, was unheard of at that time. And so you got recognized by either going to, there was 3 major camps in the country. One was the 5-star camp that was held in Holmesdale, Pennsylvania. Garfinkel out of New York ran that camp, him and Tom Konchowski. And that's where Dave Odom, Seth Greenberg, John Calipari, all of them kind of cut their teeth because they worked those camps.
Outdoor, right?
Outdoor, played outdoors. And then they started the BC camp, which was held here in Milledgeville, Georgia.
And that was Jim Lunsford, right?
James Lunsford down at Baldwin County. But they had the BC camp here. And then they had a BC camp in Rensselaer, Indiana. And then they had something called the Superstars camp out in California that was held at Santa Barbara, University of Santa Barbara. And outside of those camps, that was the only places you got exposure to see the best high school players in the country play. So, we had an opportunity then to see Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing and those guys.
Len Bias.
They were Chris Washburn from Hickory, North Carolina with NC State was unbelievable.
Tito Horford. You coached him at Miami?
We coached at Miami. And we had some good players. We had Larry Nance and Mitchell Wiggins played for me at Clemson, along with Horace and Harvey Grant, 2 boys from Sparta, Georgia. Yeah. And so the ACC then, and there was only 8 teams in the ACC at that time. Yeah. There wasn't 14 or 16 teams. So everything was just so condensed and so big. And the University of Maryland with Lefty Driesell. And you have to understand, the coaches in the ACC were just legends. Lefty at Maryland was nuts. Yeah. Dean Smith, who smoked 2 packs and a half of cigarettes every day at NC State. Jim Vano at NC State, and before Jim, it was Norm Sloan at NC State. Yeah. And
who ended up being the Utah Jazz coach? Same Norm? Am I thinking the same guy?
No, that's Norm. But Norm Sloan went from NC State to the University of Florida. Now, this is a story that you got to understand. Yeah. The night we opened up the gym at Augusta University, Christenberry Fieldhouse, playing the University of South Carolina, Norm Sloan's grandson, Benji Taylor from was a walk-on kid on my team. He was at the game. Okay. Joe B. Hall from Kentucky, who was visiting Augusta National because he had retired, he was at the game.
Neat.
That night we opened, and we almost beat the University of South Carolina.
That close.
Should have won that game. But anyway, it just goes to show you, and they were characters. Carl Tacey, was at the Wake Forest University, and Dave Odom was Carl Tacey's assistant coach.
Yeah.
And so the coaching was exceptional, and you went to places like Maryland to play. Cole Fieldhouse was crazy. Cameron Indoor Stadium. We won Horace Grant's freshman year, and Horace Grant had 18 points, 6 for 6 from the floor, 6 for 6 from the free throw line, and 18 rebounds.
Yeah.
And walking off the floor that night, Coach Foster said he'll be a pro. I said, why did you say that, Coach? He said, you don't come here and do what he did in Cameron as a freshman.
Yeah.
And Horace, 14 or 15 years, Chicago Bulls, the Lakers, rest is history. And so, it was just great, man, just seeing those guys and seeing the great North Carolina teams with Sam Perkins, James Worthy, Michael Jordan. The only guy, it was said the only guy could keep Michael under 20 points was Dean Smith.
I love watching, you can go on YouTube and watch some old, probably all those games, but for sure I've seen some North Carolina games. And the whole game is played like 15 feet and in. The spacing's totally different. It's like a different sport. It's so fun to watch. And I just want to ask this too. You spent 50 years in a college setting. You told me last year, right after you retired, you said, basically from when you were 18 until the time you were retired, you played college basketball at Belmont Abbey, and then all the coaching stops, and so 50 years in total. And that ACC, that's just legendary stuff. And so I wonder, did you land from Belmont Abbey and then Clemson? How'd you land that gig? That's so impressive.
What was so again, the old saying, Chad, is not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And my head coach at Belmont Abbey, Bob Hussey, who later on became the coach at Davidson, and then had an assistant coach at Stockton at Clemson, and then went with Bill Foster when he left Miami to Virginia Tech, and then later on the head coach at Virginia Tech. He and Bill were good friends because Bill Foster started at UNC Charlotte.
Okay.
And Belmont Abbey and Charlotte all there together. And we would have cross-country meets because we had to run cross-country to get in shape for basketball.
Yeah.
So Cedric Maxwell and Melvin Watkins and I became good friends because we were all freshmen together.
Okay.
Cedric Cornbread Maxwell at UNC Charlotte. Well, Bill Foster and Bob Hussey became good friends. And so when I graduated from college in 1977, I went back home to Washington, D.C. to take a civil service test because everyone worked in the federal government. That's what you did.
Right.
And I was working in a gas station car wash. As assistant manager. That was my job.
Okay.
And I get home, I didn't have a car, I was riding the bike back and forth to work. I get home that day because there were no cell phones. And my mother said, Clint, Coach Hussey called and wants you to call him as soon as possible. So of course I get on the phone, call Coach Hussey. Coach Hussey said, you're going to be receiving a call from Bill Foster at Clemson University about an opportunity as a graduate assistant. Are you interested? Yes, they did. And he said, well, Coach Foster's going to call you. Later on that night, Coach Foster called me. 2 days later, I was on my way to Clemson for a visit. They were having basketball camp, and just so happened at the basketball camp, my college roommate, Desmond Dennis, was actually working the camp at Clemson.
Okay.
So I went there the next morning, I get up, meet with Coach Foster. He said, we want to offer you a job. What you think? And the following Monday, I was there at Clemson University as a graduate assistant coach and got my graduate degree. And after 2 years, I was the youngest full-time assistant coach in the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So neat.
And so that's how that went.
And I feel like when Tubby Smith spoke at your retirement ceremony at Christenberry Fieldhouse last, I think it was June. Did he say that you and he were kind of, in a way, pioneers when it comes to black assistant coaches at the major college level?
Yeah, well, Tubby and I's relationship went way back. We played against each other in high school. When he was a senior, I was a freshman. And then when we get to college, he was at High Point College. I was at Belmont Abbey. He was a senior, and I was a freshman. My first call as an assistant coach at Clemson University was to call Hope County High School and talk to Orlando Smith, the head coach about a young man that he had ended up going to NC State. Harold, oh God, his name escapes me right now, first name Harold. And I get on the phone. I said, may I speak to Coach Orlando Smith? And he said, this is Coach Smith. I said, this is Clint Bryant from Clemson. He said, Clint, this is Tubby. This is Tubby. I said, Tubby? And then...
Oh, so his real name's Orlando. I didn't know that.
His name is Orlando.
Yeah.
Orlando Smith.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's how Tubby and I's relationship and coaching started. And then Tubby, after that, went to Virginia Commonwealth, where he was assistant coach for 13 years, turned down jobs. I had gotten Tubby 3 or 4 Division I big-time jobs because he was a good friend, and he turned them all down. And then he finally left there, and he went to work for, I think, Rick Pitino
Okay.
at Kentucky.
Okay.
And then he went to work for George Felton at South Carolina.
Yeah.
And then when then he got the Tulsa
Right.
assistant's
Yeah.
job, and then the University of Georgia, head coach at Tulsa, head coach at Georgia, then the head coach at Kentucky,
Yeah.
Minnesota, Texas Tech,
Yes.
Memphis,
Yes.
High Point, and so it's a small world. But again, I got that opportunity at Clemson because my college coach and Bill Foster were good friends, and he was looking for a young black assistant coach to be on his staff.
Okay.
And I became that guy.
Wow, so neat. That I can't even get over the stories you tell. The old ACC, I would give anything to be able to transform myself back there and see that live. So you're lucky.
But it was interesting, and like I said, the coaches were all characters. And then during that time, Chad, all the majority of the ACC tournaments were played in Greensboro.
Yeah, and again this year. Now, is that the first time? Because they went to like New York
and everywhere. Yeah, and it's the first time in a long time. And the only other 2 places in my 7 years at Clemson, we played one ACC tournament in Cole Fieldhouse, Landover, Maryland.
Maryland. Yeah.
At the center, and that was the year UVA came in as the number 8 seed with Barry Parkhill and won the tournament.
Yeah.
And then we go 1 year to after Georgia Tech joined the league, we did have the ACC tournament in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was always in Greensboro.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the ACC, tell us about the best story of the week, which features, in some ways, some people might call him the king of the ACC.
Coach K. Well, it was so funny, the first couple of years at Duke, Coach K came from the Army.
Yes.
Where he played.
Under Bobby Knight.
He played for Bobby Knight, and then when Bobby Knight took the Indiana job, K got the job.
Yeah.
But what people don't know is K record at Army was a losing record.
Yeah.
But Bobby Knight convinced Dick Bubas, the athletic director at Duke, to take Coach K.
Yeah.
Well, the first 3 years at Duke, Coach K got his brains beat in.
Yeah, he did.
He got beat bad, and the people was, boy, they were on him.
Yeah.
They were like, what do? We need to get rid of this guy. And then he brought Johnny Dawkins in.
Yes.
And then the next year,
Tommy Amaker
in that group.
Yeah.
Because when Mike took over, he had taken over for Bill Foster at Duke, and he had Gene Banks and Jaminski and Spanarko in that group, and they were number 1 in the country, and that's who we had beaten that time for the number 1 ranking.
Yeah.
And so at that time, so anyway, Coach K comes in, but on this past Saturday night, the New York Knicks were playing the Brooklyn Nets at Madison Square Garden, and Coach K came to the game because 3 of his former players were playing. Kyrie Irving and at the Nets, along with Seth Curry of the Nets, and then Barrett,
J.J.
Barrett of the Knicks. And at the end of the game, Coach K came to the floor, and all 3 of those guys took off their jerseys and gave to Coach K. And I thought that was the play of the week, if you will. Just seeing Coach K retired now, coming to a game to see his former players, and they thinking that much of Coach K to give him their jersey.
That's great.
That was strong.
That's great. Well, Coach, thank you.
Last thing I just want to tell you, we got some coaches in trouble, big trouble.
Oh, let's talk.
Patrick Ewing, Michigan, big trouble. Jerry Stackhouse at Vanderbilt, big trouble. Kermit Davis at Ole Miss is in big trouble, and I think that list will grow. One of the things that's very interesting that 3 of the 4 guys are now coaching in college with no college experience. Patrick, Jawan, and Jerry Stackhouse were all NBA guys, all great college players. You don't be, come on, Patrick Ewing was a great college player.
One of the best
player.
ever.
One of the best. Jawan Howard were really good. Fab Five, really good. Patrick and Jawan, both exceptional assistant coaches in the NBA. Jerry Stackhouse, great player, Kinston, North Carolina, University of North Carolina, at Vanderbilt, in trouble. Kermit Davis at Ole Miss, coming from not Tennessee, Cookville, Middle Tennessee State. Had great records at Middle Tennessee, haven't been able to get it done at Ole Miss. Mike Bray from Notre Dame hung it up last week. Yes. So there's going to be some openings in college. Now, what's going to happen is that what mid-major coach is going to do a great job in the NCAA tournament, going to get an opportunity to move. The young man at UNC Greensboro, Western, who's now at Cincinnati, is doing a really good job. Some people think the guy Furman might be the next guy at Ole Miss. Furman has a good record right now. So we'll keep you abreast of that. I'm sure this list will grow, and we'll talk about the ins and outs of who's going where.
Okay, thanks, Coach. We'll see
you.
We'll see everybody next week.